Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Retail Refresh, the show where we talk about everything to do with retail media and technology. I'm Rob, and I'll be one of your hosts for today.
And I'm Sabrina, also here, also hosting. Rob, I've got a question for you.
I'm ready. Lay it on me.
Do you know what you get when you mix food content, brand sponsorships, and contextually relevant delivery?
I have no idea, Sabrina. What do you get?
A recipe for a highly impactful retail media campaign.
Ooh, perfect setup for today's show. And that's because we're digging into shoppable recipes and contextual advertising today on the show. We're going to get into what they are, what they offer, how they make use of context to drive shopper behavior. Nice one, Sabrina.
Well, you take a good intro like this one, add one awesome guest, and mix in some good conversation, and you've got a recipe for a great episode.
Sure. Yeah. Good. Good setup. Way to keep that going. So who are we talking to today, Sabrina?
Wait. I got another one. Fold in some graphics, edit on high until ready, and then serve it with love.
Okay. Sabrina, I think this joke is starting to get a little bit overdone.
Okay. Sorry. All right. So today we're going to be talking to Yuni Baker-Saito. He's the CEO and co-founder at Chicory, a company that is all about turning recipe content into media opportunities for CPG brands, retailers, and publishers. He made the Path to Purchase Institute's 40 Under 40 list in 2022 and the Forbes 30 Under 30 for retail media in 2019. And he's just one of those folks in the retail media space that you've got to hear. So Yuni, thank you so much for being here and welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's great to have you. So let's get started maybe with a little bit of context for our discussion today. Can you start off by giving us a quick overview of what Chicory does?
Yeah, so Chicory is a technology platform. We transform recipe content into commerce media. So it means a bunch of different things, but primarily recipe content is very high intent. Consumers go there to make their shopping list. They might actually even be in the store. So what we do is one of two things. One, we serve hyper contextual ads into those recipes. Recipe calls for Greek yogurt. We'll serve a Chobani ad. So you're reaching that right consumer in that right moment. We also make those recipes shoppable. So for each of our recipe integrations, there's a little button that says Get Ingredients under the list of ingredients in the recipe. Click it. It opens up a little modal with all the retailers in your area. You can select a retailer and all the ingredients you need for that recipe are added to your basket. Today, we work with over 5,200 recipe sites, so premium publishers like the Food Network or Hearst or Taste of Home, as well as thousands of bloggers as well. And we work with probably all of the top retailers in the country.
Awesome.
It's really cool. You were featured in an article for Forbes a couple of years ago about contextual commerce, and you talked about how contextual commerce helps to reach high intent shoppers earlier in their buying journey. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what that means to you.
Yeah. So when we think about the buyer journey, especially in media, you can start very high level. This is kind of traditional brand awareness advertising. Start very high level, top of the funnel, where you're just targeting consumers because you feel like they fit a certain demographic or they fit a certain geo. But then as you go all the way to the bottom of the funnel, and this is kind of where you guys play, you have the in-store experience or the e-commerce, we call it the .com experience, so Kroger.com experience, where consumers are in that moment of purchase. So there aren't as many consumers to reach, but they're super, super high intent. Where contextual commerce sits is kind of a layer in between. So we say, hey, there are moments across the web where people are in a purchase mindset, are very high intent, and you can also reach them at scale. So there are a ton of them. And recipes are one of those moments. So when we talk about contextual commerce and recipes, we're saying, hey, we enable brands and retailers to reach consumers in kind of this mid layer of the consumer journey.
Great. So at Broadsign here, we're fond of the expression add to cart moments. So can you talk to us a little bit about what an add to cart moment looks like with a shoppable recipe?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this is actually how we started the business. So when we started Chicory 10 years ago, my co-founder and I, we were consumers. It was a very consumer-oriented app or technology. And for us, we would go onto Google, we would search for, chicken paella recipe. We'd find a blog, we'd go to the recipe, we'd scroll down, through some content and get to the recipe ingredient section. And then you're like, okay, now I have to take this, write a list, go to the grocery store and actually get those ingredients, come home and cook those recipes. So for us, or that shoppable moment, we're essentially saying, okay, the consumer today, and most consumers have a very similar buyer journey. They're going to Google, they're searching for a recipe. And when they come on that recipe, instead of having to write a list and go to the store, there's that button that says get ingredients. And by clicking that button, you're able to actually instantly transfer all of those ingredients directly into your, call it Amazon cart or your Instacart cart or your Whole Foods cart. And so all you have to do is click check out, and then you have all the ingredients delivered to your door. So, we made it seamless. I think that's, again, that's how we started the company 10 years ago, back when, online grocery wasn't really a thing. And now certainly, especially, during the pandemic, e-commerce has taken off, and that side of the business has seen a lot more engagement since then as well. Yeah.
So what are the kinds of opportunities for brands and advertisers? I mean, we've talked about it a little bit already, but what are they looking to do with this kind of model, and what kind of results can they generate with this kind of shoppable recipe campaign?
Yeah. So what's interesting is, we have a couple different models for brands. So when we talk about shoppable recipe models, we have two major products that are pretty differentiated in the ecosystem. So one is called branded cart, and the other is called featured retailer. And in both scenarios, brands or retailers can insert themselves into the shoppable recipe user flow. So if a consumer goes to Food Network, they find a recipe that they like that, let's say, calls for Greek yogurt. Someone clicks this get ingredients button. When they select their retailer, a retailer can actually sponsor that second touch point for the consumer. So when all the retailers get listed, Walmart, for example, can pay to be a bigger sponsored button, bigger placement. And we actually see that it drives a lot more engagement, a lot more traffic to the retailer. So that's a product that we call featured retailer. The second product along that user funnel is when a consumer selects Walmart, for example, a company like Chobani could sponsor what we call a branded cart. And so when a consumer adds Greek yogurt to their cart, Chobani goes along with it. And that's really, really important because, as you know, consumers use the cart as oftentimes they use the e-commerce cart as their shopping list. In addition, if even anecdotally, if you were to make a new recipe, for example, and you're saying, hey, what brand of Greek yogurt should I get? If that Chobani is already in your cart, you're probably going to buy that. And in fact, the next time you make the recipe, you'll probably go back to Chobani. So there's a lot of LTV value there as well. So those are the two kind of shoppable recipe branded products that we have that are extremely powerful because it drives either to a specific retailer's cart or drives your product directly into a consumer's basket. When we go a little bit broader and think contextual commerce on the recipe itself, again, we have these hyper-contextual ad units where we can target consumers who are looking for specific ingredients. So again, in that Chobani example, recipe calls for Greek yogurt, we have something called the inline ad unit, where literally in that list, when the recipe calls for a half cup of Greek yogurt, we can put a Chobani ad directly underneath. We can either have a call to action that says, hey, use Chobani for this Greek yogurt recipe, or it could even have a add to cart button on that ad unit. So a consumer can say, hey, I actually need a Greek yogurt. Let me add this to my cart directly to Walmart or directly to Instacart or whichever retailer. And it's interesting because we've seen a lot of success with these hyper-contextual ads, particularly in driving new and lapsed shoppers for these brands. The recipe moment is a very inspirational moment. 75% of consumers try new products because a recipe recommends it. And so having your brand inserted into that moment is extremely, extremely powerful.
That's very cool. So go on, sorry.
I would agree, because first of all, this conversation is making me hungry. And second of all, there are so many new things in my fridge, especially with the pandemic. We were cooking up recipes, and a lot of people were baking stuff they've never baked before. And we discovered so many new ingredients that we've never used before. So that's really exciting. And I love the little examples you gave. Sorry, Rob, go back to you.
I'm just curious about, because this is, to me, fairly, I don't know, it's not something I'd encountered much of maybe in the past. How is this kind of sitting alongside of, other omni-channel activations these brands are maybe looking to do? Just how are they incorporating this kind of offer into what else they do for digital marketing?
Yeah, so again, I think we sit between what we call national brand marketing as well as shopper marketing. So shopper marketing is very, retail targeted. Brand is a little bit more broad, and we kind of fill this nice middle ground of, hey, targeted, but still has a ton of scale. So historically, we've had a lot of, we've worked with a lot of shopper marketing companies. This is reaching high intent consumers. I think what's happened now is the industry has just gone through a pretty significant shift, especially with retail media. And I know you guys are impacted by it, and it's kind of, the talk of the town right now. But more broadly, retail media's impact on budgets just across the board for CPGs is significant. CMOs of these CPG companies have looked at the results given by retail media networks and said, hey, we can actually measure, campaigns that are run online, instead of before it was kind of like, hey, let's run the Super Bowl ad. And we hope it reaches a ton of people. But now it's saying, hey, wow, Kroger can return us this data. H-E-B can get us this data. We need to start thinking more about that consumer funnel and not just about broad awareness. And so when it comes to the digital media plan for CPGs, oftentimes we sit alongside and adjacent to a retail media buy or a national brand buy as kind of a scaled, more targeted media execution.
Nice. You alluded earlier to us kind of, being more of the in-store kind of space. That's kind of like our playground. You guys are a bit more digital focused. I want to drop back again to the Forbes article we mentioned earlier about contextual commerce. In that article, you talk about the traditional approach to in-store shopper marketing becoming less effective as time goes on. So I'm wondering, there's still a lot of opportunity in the in-store environment, right? But we just have to kind of like think about it maybe a little differently. What lessons do you think the in-store environment can take from digital experiences like the ones that Chicory offers and also just advocates for?
Well, what's interesting, so I think the context here is that Forbes article, was written, I think in 2020, January of 2021. So right, kind of heat of the pandemic, where e-commerce was taking off, in-store shopping was kind of on the decline. And so I think that's important context, because I do think that both kind of that online Kroger.com experience is an extremely powerful moment to reach the consumer. And the in-store moment is an extremely, extremely powerful moment to reach the consumer. Because where else are you going to find someone who's grocery shopping than in the actual grocery store itself? However, I think that said, obviously foot traffic declined to retailers, to physical retailers during the pandemic. And it's almost like a phoenix from the ashes kind of scenario, because I do think now that in-store is becoming much more important again as people go back to the store. And I think there was almost like a refresh of how in-store marketing is being done. So instead of, historically you just have end caps and you're negotiating with kind of these larger CPG marketing firms to do these like displays and these types of things, you can get a lot more creative. And I think the one thing that in-store can learn from digital is really about personalization. It doesn't have to be, hey, we're going to order this type of banner or display across all 3,000 stores for this one retailer. You can all of a sudden start tailoring to the demographics of the certain area where the store is, or you can day part. You can start to do time of day kind of thing. So you can start looking at what's being purchased at the store when and which locations, and start to tailor that and personalize the messages that are being shown to the consumer.
That does bring to mind one question for me, just a point of curiosity, and I'm not expecting you to give away any secrets if anything's in the works. But as the in-store the in-store environment does start to digitize a little bit more, do you see opportunities for what Chicory does to kind of move a bit more into the in-store space somehow? Just a point of curiosity for me.
Yeah, it's funny. It's interesting. Like I was mentioning before, we have all these kind of disparate budgets in CPG, and again, retail media, it feels like has started to consolidate a lot of these disparate budgets, both, and I think the big one is trade. And a lot of trade has historically been in store. And so from our clients, we actually get asked all the time, like, how can I take my, Chicory activation? How can I start doing it in store? We have done a few more analog in-store partnerships in the past, which has been super interesting. So promoting a recipe, having something similar in the seafood aisle with some recipe content to promote the same campaign. I think that was super interesting. But I think there's a huge opportunity to say, hey, what are the recipes people are looking at? How do we get those recipes to the right stores? Kind of like what I was saying before. Let's go into a geo. Let's see what recipes are popular. Let's see what ads are highly effective in those areas. And then let's, replicate it and mirror it to the in-store experience and the in-store, those in-store ads in those same areas. And I think you could create a much, much more robust omni-channel campaign that isn't just, hey, this is my digital campaign, this is my in-store. You're kind of creating that holistic experience for that consumer.
So we're going to play a little bit of a make-believe for a moment. Say we've got a chain of grocery stores with in-store displays, and we want to deliver an in-store campaign that ties into Chicory's standard business model. What does that look like, and what would we need to make it a really extra impactful campaign?
Yeah, so I think it would be interesting. I think the perfect example would be someone like, again, I keep bringing up Chobani, but they were our first client, so I like to bring them up a lot. So Chobani is running a campaign. They want to get people to use Greek yogurt over sour cream as a healthier option. So throughout the Chicory network, when people are looking at recipes around your stores, we can say, hey, use Chobani as an option, as a replacement for sour cream. And we can target recipes that actually call for sour cream. So we're doing what we call conquesting. And then from there, what we could do is we can bring that experience into, Broadsign's experience and say, hey, let's promote Chobani as an alternative to sour cream. Let's get those consumers, who are passing by the Broadsign, I don't know what you call them, modules, and we can flash them with the same message. So Chobani is getting a extremely omni-channel, extremely personalized new way of reaching that consumer. I think the additional touch, especially now as we hit kind of economic headwinds, would be to say, hey, let's promote some temporary price reductions or coupons to be able to help the consumer. I would also say we could even layer in, again, recipes or different have different offerings to say, hey, these are different ways to use Chobani Greek yogurt. It could be a replacement for sour cream. It could be a replacement for cream cheese. Here are a bunch of recipes where we've tested this and it tastes good. And ultimately, I think that ads like that and can be actually useful for the consumer. We call it solutions-based shopping, but consumers are looking for solutions. They aren't just buying Greek yogurt to eat by itself. Usually it's for breakfast or it goes in a recipe. So there's always a solution. I think brands can utilize that in order to have the most impact.
I think it's a great point. We often talk about, our vision for what successful retail media would look like. It's not like an interruptive experience, right? It's there to enhance your experience when you're at the store. It's there to help you. I think it's a really great way of looking at it in general. Also, if ever this is applied in any way to potato chips, I'm doomed. I already have a problem. I will just buy way too many. So let's all use our powers for good, please. I think that mostly covers what we want to talk about. Do you have any final thoughts for us, Yuni, before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I think my final thoughts are, I think we're both companies, Broadsign and Chicory, are in a really interesting space. Chicory's ethos has always been to figure out simple solutions that work. When we first started serving contextual ads into recipes, it's funny, this was around 2016, and AI and ads and big machine learning, that was kind of all the rage back then. But we didn't really understand it, and we didn't really think it really worked at the time. And so we said, why not just serve ads in recipes? It makes a ton of sense. And I think, similar for you guys, if someone's in the store, serve an ad to them. It makes a ton of sense. And I think with retail media is heading into a completely new phase of growth. And I think we'll see a couple of different models come out depending on the size of the retailer. But what's funny is, in-store retail media is now kind of a hot topic. Whereas, in theory, in-store marketing has been around for a long time. But again, it goes back to that idea of simplicity and grounding, your products and your ad products in simplicity. And so, I think for moving forward in the industry, I think, especially with data privacy and things getting a little more complicated, going back to the idea of what programs work, what programs are simple, what makes sense, I think that's going to have to be the path moving forward for most of these brands.
Amazing. Yuni, thank you so much for your time. If people want to kind of follow you and follow Chicory, where's the best place for them to go to do that?
They would just have to find us at www.chicory, that's CHICORY.co. Fantastic.
Thank you again. This has been a really illuminating conversation. We're both probably going to go clear out our stores of Greek yogurt. It's going to be a great time. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. This was a ton of fun.
It's great talking to you, Yuni. Thank you.
So that's it for today. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back in a couple weeks. So make sure you stop back in then to see what else we have in store for you. Right? Okay.
Insert drum roll here. Bing.